This is Eric Rosenthal. I'm the Executive Director of Disability Rights International, and I have the great pleasure of introducing today the Honorable Judy Heumann, a good friend and U.S. activist. Judy, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hello. As Eric said, I'm the Honorable Judith Heumann, and my honorable title comes because I was an assistant secretary or internationally like a deputy minister, and my position was confirmed by the Senate. I was very excited when you asked me, Eric, to speak because the issue of deinstitutionalization, keeping children out of orphanages, integrated in the community has been something that I've been engaged in my entire life, both personally and professionally. And then I worked at the State Department in the Obama administration as the Special Advisor for International Disability Rights.
Thank you. Your voice on this over the years has been just so important, so invaluable, and we appreciate you speaking out and joining us today. What would be your main message to governments about what they need to do in light of the current situation facing 10 million children in institutions and countless adults who...
I think we're in a position now where organizations like yours and other disability rights groups domestically and globally have really been pushing both the communities and government on what is wrong with segregation, whether it's in education or people being put in institutions or orphanages from young to old. It really produces terrible outcomes, both for disabled people and I think, quite frankly, for many of the staff that are working in these situations where they clearly know that these individuals have much more capacity than many think. We need strengthening of disability rights organizations to be able to be stronger advocates. In too many cases, disability rights groups don't yet know enough about the role of government and how government functions. And as one who worked both on the outside as an advocate and then has worked in government for a number of decades, it really is important to marry the two together. Absolutely. So that people can really be speaking in a knowledgeable way and not be blown off by government people who believe that you don't really know what you're talking about, so they'll have a meeting with you and be done with it. I look at increasing the funding for disability rights organizations. And when I worked in the Clinton administration, we did that, and have other administrations since then. You know, my experiences of being denied the right to go to school, and then when I finally started going to school when I was 9 years old, only being in segregated educational classes with an inferior education. But in the United States in the early 1970s, there was an institution called Willowbrook State School for the quote unquote mentally retarded. And there was a huge scandal. And I became friends with some of the organizers who were working on closing down the institution. And so it was the first time that I ever got to visit an institution. And it really was from that day forward that the abhorrent conditions that young children and teenagers and older people were living in were so inhumane that there was no way as a disability rights advocate that I could not continue to raise these voices of people who really, in so many ways, had their voices totally minimized. Yeah. But the very important aspect, groups like the International Disability Alliance and their members are speaking up and speaking out and are working with governments to really work harder on making a difference. But this is something that none of us want to live in, and we should not be supporting a place that we would not want to put our children or ourselves. Oh. Well, my mother, I found out when I was 36 years old that a doctor had recommended that I be put in an institution. And my mother had made my father promise that he would never tell me that. And when I was 36 years old, he told me. Yeah. And I remember saying, that can't be possible. Yeah. And my mother confirmed it.
Well,
But
your
I
mom was a strong
also,
woman. Thank God for her, who knew not to listen to the doctor.
and I think also because, my parents were German Jewish refugees, and knowing what had gone on in Germany
Yeah,
during the Holocaust and the murdering of disabled children,
yeah,
I think that also was a
absolutely,
strong reason.
absolutely. Wow, wow. Thank you for sharing that story. That's very powerful.
I
What do
think
you
you have
see
enough.
as the opportunities now with this disability summit, with the global effort to support disability rights, um, uh, with the sustainable development goals? What are the main opportunities for real action now?
I think we need to continue to build on the momentum, and the summit with GLAD and IDA. And when we think about the increasing number of both disabled individuals who are working in disabled people's organizations and disabled people that are now also working in government, and the number of government employees in many countries in development who really are also becoming spokespersons for inclusion and really understanding what people in the disability community have been saying for decades. These are all very positive things. I think it's great that Norway and Ghana are hosting this summit, and between now and hopefully the next summit, I think it's really very important that Norway and Ghana and the International Disability Alliance are supporting this summit. And I do hope that there will be another summit in the next 3 to 4 years. But I also want to say that what comes out of this summit in 2022 needs to have measurable outcomes. And looking, for example, at the UN guidelines, Ray, just looking at the UN
Guidelines on
UN,
institutionalization. Yeah.
I know, looking at the UN guidelines on deinstitutionalization and getting those commented on and put into place will enable both civil society and governments to be held accountable. And that, I think, is what we need. It's about accountability.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. I think we should wrap it up here. Thank you, Judy, for your time and for your really inspiring leadership and voice on these issues.
Thank you.